In one very small, God-forgotten village called Dover, a very important secret was hidden, and it didn't matter whether the person was injured while hunting monsters or during fieldwork. It also didn't matter what social class a person belonged to, whether they were poor parents who needed strength for the farm, or heroes who risked their lives hunting monsters, or even children who took over for their parents. They all trusted only one remedy, a potion made by the apothecary of Dover. After using this miraculous remedy, people gained unreal powers. Therefore, they all trusted only the famous pharmacist. A local press correspondent decided to find out what the apothecary's secret recipe for the potion was, and came to interview him for his newspaper. The pharmacist turned out to be a beautiful girl who said that this potion was very difficult to create, but for the sake of money, and then she quickly corrected herself, saying that for the sake of your health, she was ready to do anything. The reporter noticed that the pharmacist hesitated and asked if the girl was nervous. Then the man told her that he had heard about a secret ingredient that only grows in this village. The pharmacist replied that she could even show him the secret ingredient. The girl pointed to a strange red flower and said that it was it. The girl added that the flower was called mandrake and warned that it should not be touched. But the correspondent did not listen to the pharmacist and reached for the flower because he could not believe that such a small plant was capable of such miracles. The man pulled on the flower, and when its root appeared, the pharmacist almost fainted from what she saw, because she knew how it would all end. Not everyone knew that when the root system of the amazing flower was exposed, it immediately began to attack the intruder with its ultrasound. The correspondent fell to his knees from unbearable pain. Meanwhile, the girl couldn't understand whether it was because of Mandrake's ultrasonic attack or not. But at that moment, she seemed to have a clear vision. The girl realized that this was an unreal world and a game called Save the Earth. And the pharmacist who gave an interview for the local newspaper was herself, Sherry Azriel. In this game, she was listed as an NPC, the apothecary of ancient Dobru. The game, Save the Earth, had the best rendering system among all virtual games. Players could attack monsters with characters that were trained using artificial intelligence. The creators also complicated the usual quest by adding deviations to the monsters. It was a game with a real story, where the player had to save a world that was on the verge of destruction. This game was made popular by its complete virtual immersion. By wearing virtual equipment, the user could see and feel the game world as if it were real. Players easily became heroes, traveled the world in search of adventures, and all this felt like the real world. Users had only positive feedback from this exciting virtual reality. Although it was a beta version of the game, there were no end to bugs and errors on the servers. Due to the fact that enemies were constantly learning from artificial intelligence, players were unable to choose the perfect attack option. This, of course, intrigued avid gamers, but none of them could reach the finals, because it was simply unrealistic. Therefore, this game began to gain immense popularity in the gaming community. A message from the work chat appeared on Sherry's monitor, stating that an error had occurred in the new version. Due to an urgent system check, players' access to the beta version would be limited, so the responsible persons were asked to fix all errors. The girl asked angrily how an error could occur just 12 hours after the release of the new version. She had just finished work, and it was already 11 o'clock on Friday evening. In fact, Sherry Azriel was a worker on the operations team of the game Save the Earth, and was responsible for processing bug reports and resolving player complaints. The girl connected to the game as an NPC and checked for bugs in quests and artificial intelligence. Sherry indignantly said that this was the 308th time she had been fixing bugs, asking when they would finally end. She went to her monitor and could not even imagine what was waiting for her this time. Putting on her virtual equipment, Sherry sat down in front of the screen. She understood that she had no way to refuse management, and there was nothing she could do about it. The only thing that pleased her was that she could work from home. Sherry logged into the game, and a warning appeared on the screen that playing for long periods of time could cause mental and physical harm. She caught herself thinking that she had never thought about those words and entered the game. A journalist appeared before the girl's eyes, who announced that now it was time to ask her the next question about the miraculous potion. The girl was surprised to notice that his name was written above the journalist's, Damien. It was quite strange, and she couldn't even believe that she was actually in the game world. So instead of focusing on the answer, she just stared at the inscription that was above the journalist's head. Also at the top was the playing time, which was 2 years. The girl lowered her eyes and felt uneasy for a moment. The journalist noticed this immediately and asked if she was okay. The girl decided to honestly answer that she suddenly felt sick. The girl apologized and said that they had to stop their interview for now and ran to her pharmacy. The journalist looked at the girl's back in confusion. She had only one question. How could she have spent 2 years here? Sherry immediately began to analyze that 2 years in the game equaled 24 hours in real life. She remembered that she started playing at 11 p.m. on Friday night, and if it had already been 24 hours, it meant that in the real world, it was already late Saturday night. Sherry began to panic, having spent quite a long time in the game. She understood that she could not stay here. The girl immediately called up the settings and pressed the exit button. A message appeared on the screen saying that due to an unknown error, the exit command was currently unavailable. No matter how many times the girl pressed that damn button, the message was the same. The girl had only one question in her mind: how to get out of here. She understood that if someone from the real world disconnected her from the game, then the exit from the game would be completed. But she had no friends, and she lived alone, so this option was definitely out of the question. Besides, since the girl was online, it meant she was working. So, even her colleagues wouldn't notice her absence, and the girl began to panic, worrying about what would happen to her body. Sherry realized that she had been in the game for a whole day and had not eaten in the real world, so she risked dying soon. After the girl realized 100% that she was in the game, she tried every possible way to get back. The first thing Sherry did was to find an NPC, a consultant, to whom she could report the bug. The consultant greeted her with a joyful smile upon meeting the girl. Because of its past, this damn game created a bug reporting system through NPCs, and since Sherry was the only such NPC in the village of Dover, she went all the way to Earl Haley's land for an NPC consultant. The girl immediately started shouting about creating a bug report, and in response, a message appeared that reports were accepted on weekdays from 9 to 18. Sherry fell to the ground exhausted and realized that it was impossible to contact the consultant outside of working hours. But she didn't lose hope of getting out of this damn game, so she decided to try the second way, namely, to die from a monster attack. If the player died, a window would appear where they could choose to either quit the game or start all over again. Because this game was related to the nervous system, the pain felt real. But Sherry had no other choice. Having found the monster, Sherry allowed it to attack her. After the attack, Sherry felt unbearable pain, and a window popped up next to her, indicating that her health was below 10%, so she was automatically teleported to the starting point, the village of Dover. And after a few tries, Sherry realized that whenever her health dropped below 10%, she would return to the village. For a game that was full of bugs, this return worked suspiciously well. Then the girl decided to try a win-win option. She decided that she was teleported precisely because her health was decreasing too slowly, and if she died instantly, then it should work. Sherry climbed onto the highest rock and looked down. Her heart pounded wildly, and everything inside her felt tight. She was scared to fall from such a height, but for the sake of her return to reality, she took this step. This time, the barrier that had been set up behind the rock prevented her from falling, and the girl returned to the rock. With a kick, Sherry shouted that this damn NPC couldn't even die normally. At such a pace, it seemed to her that the whole universe, or rather, this damn game, did not want to let her go. But she was not going to give up so easily and decided to try something else. Haley's lands and leave an angry message. She believed that one day, one of the game's developers would read this message and help her get out of here. But the answer was always the same. It's not working hours now. But one day, after Sherry had been playing for 2 months, a miracle happened. A message appeared in the message window saying that Game Master Area was greeting Sherry and asking if she really couldn't leave the game. The girl realized that she had finally received a response from a real consultant. Tears of happiness welled up in Sherry's eyes, and she realized that if the reason she was stuck in this damn game was a bug, then the consultant would help her right away. GM meant that he was from the production team responsible for a good reputation. Ari spent a long time dialing the notification, and finally, a message appeared, stating that the player must have been very scared, so Ari advised him to disconnect from the game. Sherry angrily reported that she was stuck in the game itself and that she was not a player, but from the operations team. Ari typed to tell the girl to wait a minute while she gathered information about her. Sherry cursed because she couldn't wait to get out of here. She didn't understand why the production team couldn't check the information about her themselves. Finally, a message appeared that the operational team had confirmed her identity and reported that she had entered the game as a pharmacist in the village of Dover. But Sherry impatiently interrupted the GM and asked if they had found the cause of the bug yet. Ari said that it seemed like the error occurred when they closed the server for a full check and asked if she could get back to Sherry after the server maintenance team responded. Sherry yelled at them not to leave her alone, as she had been waiting for a response for 2 months. GM Ari dialed for a long time, and finally a message appeared on the screen that in this case they would send an employee to Sherry's address to remove the virtual equipment from her head. The girl with a spring agreed to this proposal and thought that, after all, GM had come up with a simply brilliant solution and she would finally get out of here and into real life. Sherry sat down and waited for rescue. She already had a bunch of ideas in her head about what she would do first when she returned to reality, and she was already imagining what she would order for dinner. A couple of hours later, the girl saw the message again, in which Ari apologized for the delay in responding and said that she would start with the bad news. GM Ari reported that employees from their department immediately went to the specified address and, after carefully inspecting everything in the house, made sure that no one was in the apartment. Ari noted that they had searched every inch of the place and even checked the desk in the office just in case, but the girl was nowhere to be found. So she asked if Sherry had joined the game somewhere else. Sherry's mind immediately began to wonder where she could be if she wasn't found at home or in the office. She couldn't remember anything because she had been in the game for so long. So she asked for at least a missing person report, since she had no one to do it with. GM Ari posted a message that, unfortunately, under current Korean law, only a family member can write such a statement. Then Sherry screamed that she could die in real life and asked what she should do. Ari asked the girl not to panic, because soon the people responsible for the server would find the cause of the error, and they would definitely calculate Sherry's location using the company's closed system. The girl asked how long it would take, and was told that it would take about 2 days. Then Sherry noted that a person cannot survive without food for more than 72 hours, and she had already spent 24 of them in here. GM Mary printed a reassuring message that a person cannot die of hunger just like that. And according to the Guinness's Book of Records, there was a case where a person did not eat for 5 days. Sherry didn't want to read those damn messages anymore. She fell to the floor and screamed, "Why the hell they even started updating this damn game?" Because it was because of her that she ended up here as a hostage. Out of the corner of her eye, Sherry read the message in which Ari tried to calm the poor thing down and said that they had taken an unheard-of step to help her get out of the game. Due to an emergency, GM Ari gathered everyone on the production team to create an exclusive chat for Sherry. Now they could watch her in real time. In addition to Ari, GM Sarah and GM Jin were also in this chat. Sarah asked if this was the girl who was stuck in the game and needed to be disconnected. She advised the girl not to panic because the elite had come to the rescue. Jin asked if she didn't know that NPCs couldn't die. Ari asked if Sherry was happy with their team since they had worked so hard for her. Sherry replied that she didn't care about their efforts as long as they got her out of here as quickly as possible. Sarah and Jean began to mutter in displeasure that Sherry didn't have even a drop of gratitude for their efforts, and the girl shouted indignantly that after she got out of here, she would quit this damn company and write the most disgusting review. GM Ari ordered everyone to calm down and, turning to Sherry, informed her that thanks to this exclusive chat, they would help her get out of the game within 48 hours. Sherry finally got hope and asked how they could do it. Ari typed and typed messages, but nothing appeared on the screen. Then Jin said he would tell everything himself. Jean said that they would solve this problem in 48 hours this way. She just needs to complete the entire game during this time, and then she will automatically return back. Shocked, Sherry stared at the message, unsure of how to react. A piece of advice for all players starting this game immediately popped into her head, stating that they should make sure that the Nightmare Lord doesn't fall asleep. The girl got goosebumps when she realized that she would have to meet in person the main character of the game, Save the Earth, the Prince of the Castle Empire, Ludwig. As a child, Castle was placed under an unknown curse, causing the boy to have nightmares about the end of the world. But the worst thing was that later all these nightmares became reality. The emperor, courtiers, and priests joined forces to lift the curse and protect the world. But unfortunately, no efforts were successful, and no one could stop the nightmares from becoming reality. Since then, people have nicknamed him the Nightmare King. When Castle grew up, he became the cruelest and proudest man, who cared nothing for the opinions of others. His heart knew neither pity nor love. Later, Castle was captured, put behind bars, and sent to a village, where the game Save the Earth began. Users received a quest to prevent the King of Nightmares from falling asleep. Players had to prevent Castle from falling asleep as he drove through the village of Dover. To do this, gamers could use any means. Some wrote that the characters did not die in the game, so they simply brutally cremated the body of the King of Nightmares. After several repeated brutal attacks on Castle, he became so enraged that he began attacking people as soon as they tried to approach him. Currently, the number of players who have died at the hands of the Monster King has approached the number killed by the monsters themselves. Sherry understood that unlike ordinary users, she was an NPC, so she could not die in the game, and constantly returned to the starting point in the village of Dover. The girl remembered the latest news when the TV presenter said that in recent days, a virtual game had captured the attention of users so strongly that one young 20-year-old girl was found dead as a result of a prolonged hunger strike because of the game. The news said that gaming addiction caused an accident, so we need to consider the downside of virtual reality. Sherry already imagined herself in the place of that young girl and screamed that this could not happen because she did not deserve to die from a gaming addiction. Sherry ordered her to be taken out of here as soon as possible because she couldn't die here and advised her to delete her character. GM Ari replied that, unfortunately, it was simply impossible to delete a character while connected to the game. Sherry was complaining that they had trapped her in this damn game, and now she had to finish it in such a short time. She asked how she could play if she was an NPC. GM Jin said that she went through the tutorial herself, and now she's crying like an uncut. Shocked, Sherry looked at the monitor screen, where her game record history was. The girl remembered how 2 knights had burst into her pharmacy the day before, shouting for her to open the door immediately because a cruel murderer had been brought from the capital. The men rubbed their heads in confusion because the pharmacist wasn't home. And Sherry was angry that these ignorant people would come to her whenever they wanted just to get a miracle potion for free. The impudence of these knights began to annoy Sherry, and she decided to get out of here as quickly as possible before she had a fit of rage. So, closing the pharmacy forever, she took the remains of the potion. It pained the girl to watch the King of Nightmares constantly being mocked by anyone who was not lazy, so she threw several vials of potion at him to help his wounds heal. However, she didn't even realize that this had led her to go through the tutorial, because by doing so, she had woken up Cassell. Now it had dawned on Sherry that there was no other way out of this game for her. She fell to the floor exhausted. And Jin continued to say that the Lord of Nightmares had noticed her, and that trouble would soon happen if she did not defeat him. Sherry had to complete the game and finish it. To do this, she needed the main character, Castle, and this was the main condition for completing the quest. With tears in her eyes, Sherry shouted how she could possibly beat this game that even the most famous gamers couldn't handle. But her unbeatable team shouted to her not to worry, because those grandmasters don't have such great help as them. GM Jin reported that the record time it took to reach the boss was 8 hours. The girls assured that with their help, Sherry would be able to cope with this task much faster. If the system couldn't fix the error, then she had no choice but to play through the game to survive. But she was annoyed that she was being forced to do so against her will. Sherry gathered all her nerves into a fist and decided that she would do everything possible and impossible just to get out of the game. The first quest was to travel to Haley County, where the Lord of Nightmares had been exiled. Sherry had to prevent Castle from sleeping, as he had already noticed her, which meant the nightmares would begin in 3 days. Everyone knew that it was impossible to put the Lord of Darkness to sleep under any circumstances, so the local lords were looking for an apothecary to help them cope with this task. The conditions further stated that if Castle fell asleep, his nightmares would come true. Therefore, it was necessary to prevent him from falling asleep and at the same time keep him alive. They also promised a reward of 10,000 gold coins. The GM announced that they had changed the settings, and Sherry was left with only one NPC, the apothecary, so she didn't have to find other NPCs to complete the quest. This made the quest faster, and Sherry could immediately go to Haley County. Arriving at the county, the butler Bill opened the door for Sherry. Kendrick, who asked who she was. The girl replied that she had heard rumors that they were looking for a pharmacist. The butler looked at the girl with distrust, because her appearance left much to be desired, and she looked more like a beggar. But the servants informed him that there was only one apothecary in the district, so they could not pass up this chance. Still, the butler ordered the girl to follow him. Sherry mentally noted that her GMs had done a good job, because she was already starting to worry that she would be sent home. So Sherry was happy and followed the butler to the second floor. On the way, the girl noticed that it was quite light outside, but inside the room, it was so dark that she felt a little uneasy. Sherry also noticed letters on the road near an old chandelier, which was quite strange, since she had only just started the game. Sherry decided that perhaps there was another quest in Haley County, since she didn't remember one in the user videos. The girl also thought that this chandelier sounded like the title of the main quest. But before she could think about her idea thoroughly, the butler asked her what she was doing there and advised her to move faster. At the master's door, the butler carefully knocked on the door and said that he had brought to him the one he had been looking for so long. The girl bowed and gave her name. She also added that she had come here precisely because she had heard that the Count was looking for an apothecary. The man continued to sort through his papers and didn't even look at the girl. She thought that no one was taught manners in this game. But only one thing was clear. This man must like her. The Haleylands, Earl Adam Haley, would later be called White Sword. It was this man, together with Castle, with joint efforts, Ludwig will be able to prevent the end of the world. Sherry decided that she needed to demonstrate that she had the ability, so she thought the best way would be to simply show him the potion. The girl was afraid that if he didn't like her, it would be very difficult for her to get out of the game. Finally, the Count looked up at her and asked if she was really an apothecary. And while Sherry was thinking about what to answer him, Count Adam said that it was quite strange and asked if she had come here alone. Sherry immediately replied that she had come alone and wondered if this man was really up to something. In general, the user was supposed to persuade the NPC Pharmacist and come with him, but the artificial intelligence in the game could not know this. So Sherry thought that maybe Adam just asked her about it. A character emotional state window appeared next to the graph, indicating that Adam Haley was having doubts about the pharmacist. Sherry thought she understood that even a fool could, because Adam couldn't trust someone who looked like a beggar. The Count immediately put all the dots over the eye, saying that if the pharmacist tried to deceive him, he would not be able to guarantee Sherry's safety. And the butler pulled her cloak and shouted for her to show her face to the Count. The butler threatened the girl to hurry up, because His Highness was not going to wait long. Sherry held her hood as best she could and noted that this butler was too rude, but she could not obey him now. Sherry understood that without this cape, her appearance would be too conspicuous. The girl's skin was as beautiful as snow-white porcelain from the Joseon dynasty, and her soft hair seemed to be woven from silk. Sherry's violet eyes resembled two precious amethysts. Sherry Azrael spent a lot of effort to create such a perfect appearance for her character. The girl was worried that Count Adam might fall in love with her and then they would have to be together by the end of the game, but that was not part of her plans at all. Therefore, Sherry decided to change the topic of conversation and, breaking free from the hands of the disgusting butler, poured out bottles of a miraculous potion that maintained a person's condition in a state of insomnia onto the table in front of the Count. While Adam, though, was incredulously twisting the bottle with the purple liquid, Sherry said that this was probably what he wanted to get from the pharmacist, and therefore, in case he didn't trust her because of her appearance, she suggested that he take all the potions and get out. After that, Count Adam had even more questions for the strange apothecary, because he was not looking for her for this potion. First of all, the apothecary must stay at the Count's estate and personally give the main character potions to prevent the end of the world. Tai Sherry thought that in that time she could complete other quests and finish the game even faster. She noted that there were many servants in the manor who could handle this task themselves. To further convince the Count, Sherry said with a smile that she wasn't really counting on a reward. Sherry had only one desire in her head, to get out of this estate as soon as possible, so she added that she would be glad if this potion would help him. Adam said he wrote an ad looking for a pharmacist who could help him with his insomnia, and she brought him a potion to help him stay awake. Sherry understood that this question was a trap for users. The game's tutorial described how to destroy the Lord of Nightmares, and if users clicked the skip button without reading it, they would buy a sleeping potion and immediately lose the game. Sherry understood that warriors usually killed 100 monsters to prove their worth, but unfortunately, an apothecary couldn't prove his abilities in the same way. So Sherry decided to pretend to be the good person that Adam liked so much. She said that a convoy of convicts was passing by her village, and she heard from them that the attacker should not sleep under any circumstances. Sherry added that I am only Cassell if Ludwig falls asleep. Other people might get hurt. And since she doesn't have any special powers, she decided to help others in some way. Then Adam said that someone threw the potion at Cassell as he was driving by, and asked if it was by chance Sherry. And while the confused girl was looking for something to answer, Adam said that he trusted her with the case and ordered her to follow him. Sherry tried to explain that it was time for her to go, because she had done everything she could and given him the potion. But Adam looked at her in such a way that Sherry decided not to test his patience and followed him. The Count explained that the girl's task was to prevent the intruder from sleeping in this tower for the next 3 days, and if she succeeded, he would pay her 100,000 gold. The Count gave her the keys to the dungeon and informed her that the convict was bound with magical chains, so it was unlikely he would be able to escape. But he still advised her to be as careful as possible when she entered the cell. Standing in front of the cell door, Sherry cursed that all her plans had gone to hell, and now she would have to stay here for at least 3 more days. The girl's heart beat faster because she had only seen Castle in other players' videos, and it was quite an exciting moment for her. Then she told herself not to think about nonsense and to finish the game as soon as possible. But when she opened the door, the girl froze in the doorway because she didn't expect to see such a handsome man. His perfect body didn't let her look away, and his red eyes drew her to him like a magnet. And although the Lord of Darkness seemed calm on the outside, Sherry decided to be as cautious as possible and began to explain that she was a pharmacist from the village of Dover and had come here to give him medicine. Kaisel's head was in a rather awkward position, and Sherry decided to correct it. As soon as she touched the man, a terrible energy began to flow from him, and he advised her to take her hands away if she didn't want to die. The girl withdrew her hands in fear and remembered that he didn't like being touched. But Sherry wasn't going to give up on the quest because of Castle, so she decided to use the sense-blocking gloves, an artifact that removed the user's sense of touch. The girl looked at Cassell, but he didn't react in any way to the fact that she wasn't going to back down. A message popped up in the window that the Lord of Nightmares couldn't move right now due to a health condition. Sherry began to wonder what could have caused this disturbance. She worried that he had used up too much energy while threatening her. Looking at Castle, she noticed that he was already starting to fall asleep. Sherry couldn't let Castle fall asleep, so she apologized in advance and explained that by the Count's order, Castle had to drink this potion. But there was one problem, and that was that Castle, in his condition, couldn't drink it on his own. So Sherry said she would help him with that. After carefully examining the Lord of Darkness, the girl noticed that no windows or warnings popped up, and she did not feel any ominous aura from him. Sherry was glad that the Dark Lord was not against such a proposal. All that remained was to think of a way to give him the potion while touching him as little as possible. The girl remembered the monster tranquilizer gun used in animal hunting. Taking it out of her pocket, Sherry smiled and thought she was a real genius. Sherry explained that it was a magical device for administering medication, and that it was completely safe for his health, although it looked quite strange. With skillful movements, Sherry quickly dropped the magic potion directly into Cassell's mouth. The man almost choked and wanted to spit it out, so she covered his mouth with her hand and asked him to be patient for a while. The girl breathed a sigh of relief when she was sure that the owner had swallowed the potion and decided that she would use this method in the future. Sherry said that she would come to him again when it was time to take the potion and advised him to rest better. But as Sherry headed for the exit, she saw a system alert. The message stated that the Lord of Darkness felt the desire to kill her, and also stated that the potion would only last for an hour. Sherry was simply shocked that she would have so little time before her next encounter with the Lord of Darkness. Absolutely, since Castle could become immune to the potion's effects, and then the duration of its effects could be significantly reduced. Eventually, the drugs would stop working altogether, but the problem was that no one knew how quickly that would happen. Of course, Sherry had stocked up on enough medicine, but she was worried that luck might turn against her and the potion would stop affecting Castle altogether. She wasn't 100% sure that this method would be able to prevent a catastrophe. Sherry knew that there were other quests hidden in Haley County, so she decided to complete them as well, because she couldn't fully rely on the main quest alone. In the county of Haley, but it had lost its light. No one could pull it out, and even if someone had managed to do so without the light, the sword was just a useless piece of iron. The rusty sword had long been in the tower, where Cassell was now imprisoned. It was the same sword with which the descendant of the Haley family had once carved the darkness-eating centipede. Even after the death of its owner, the sword continued to contain the seal. But with the arrival of the Lord of Nightmares in the tower, the power of the seal began to weaken, and the sword became useless. Therefore, the thoughts of the centipede demon began to leak out. A centipede devouring darkness was parasitizing the people of Haley County, trying to remove the seal once and for all. Such monsters could only be defeated with weapons with the property of light. To destroy the main monster, you need a weapon with divine power, and in each game, the characters that the main monster possessed were different. If you destroyed them, you could get the darkest essence. If you apply the dark essence to the sword and strengthen it, it will become Adam's weapon, which he needed to reveal his special powers during the end of the world. Reviving the sword required a large amount of dark essence, which was quite difficult to obtain. It was beyond the power of ordinary users, but Sherry thought she had a GM, so she hoped she could complete this quest. Looking at the timer, Sherry noticed that time was running out, so she decided to start the quest and not waste time. After leaving the tower, Sharif immediately called up the chat window. A message from GM Ari appeared on the screen, who was happy that the girl had finally decided to use their help. And while messages from other GMs were appearing on the screen, Sherry shouted that she immediately needed to find out which character the Darkness Eater was parasitizing on and its location. Ari reported that she saw a centipede inside the maid who was supposed to bring Sherry food. The girl shouted that she needed to go back to the room immediately to catch the centipede. Sherry had barely managed to run into the room when the maid kicked open the door and shouted for the beggar to quickly take the food, although of course the girl was of no use. Sherry, meanwhile, lay on the floor and mentally thanked her fate that she had managed to return to the room in time. The maid threw a piece of moldy bread on the floor and said that the Count had ordered the apothecary to be fed the food she deserved. Sherry covered her nose with her hand. The stench of the bread was unbearable, and asked if it was even possible to eat it. Meanwhile, the maid's look changed and she shouted, "What the hell is Sherry eating, and doesn't she take her words seriously?" Sherry, of course, understood that the centipede made a person cruel. But this was too much. Sharp claws came out of the maid's hands, and the centipede shouted that if the girl did not eat this bread, it would eat her. Sherry didn't hesitate. She took out a potion with sunlight and quickly threw it in the maid's face. Immediately, a message appeared on the screen that the darkness-eating centipede had been destroyed, and Sherry had received one piece of dark essence. Sherry didn't have time to enjoy her victory when a window popped up, stating that the potion would expire in 10 minutes, and she ran as fast as she could into the tower to the Lord of Darkness. Since then, her life has become a routine. Every time she ran to the tower in advance, as soon as the window appeared about the expiration of the potion. In parallel, Sherry also destroyed the centipedes in the estate of Earl Haley. Sherry also managed to collect dark essences and infuse them into the old sword. This could only be done once a day, and she knew she would have to do it for 3 days. Every time she gave Cassell a potion, She read in the information window that the Lord of Darkness felt angry with her. Of course, Sherry had no intention of being friends with Castle, but looking into the future, she understood that she needed to somehow gain the trust of the Lord of Darkness. One day, the girl offered to bring him a potion to strengthen his health, so that he could take the medicine for insomnia on his own. Sherry said that there was nothing strange about this, and that she was doing all this only for his own benefit. The Lord of Darkness began to gain strength, and in this way the girl managed to at least somehow calm his anger. Finally, Sherry managed to gather enough dark essence to save the Sword of Light for good. When it was time to drink another portion of medicine, Sherry headed to the tower in a good mood, and hoped that today the Lord of Darkness would be able to drink the potion on his own, because the day before she had given him a health potion. But when she opened the cell door, the shocked girl noticed that Cassel was not where he was, and while she was trying to figure out where he had gone, she felt someone grab her from behind. Castle loomed over her, asking who the hell she was. Sherry tried to break free, but the Lord of Darkness squeezed her throat tighter and tighter, not giving the girl a chance to escape. He ordered her to answer quickly because he did not intend to repeat his questions. Cassel said that if she continued to play the silent game, he would wring her neck in a couple of seconds. Sherry felt her strength waning and thought that at this rate she would soon die, or rather return to the starting point in the village of Dover. She understood that she would not be able to break free by force. Then she had a brilliant idea: to use a tranquilizer, and all that remained was to find a place where she could insert the needle so that the attacker would not notice. The girl decided that this was quite cruel towards the main character, but if she wanted to survive, she had no other choice. Secretly taking the syringe out of her pocket, Sherry decided the best place to inject Castle would be between his legs. In her mind, she had already said goodbye to all of her husband's heirs he had counted on. But before she could insert the needle, Castle loosened his grip and let go of Sherry. She didn't understand why he had stopped. The girl began to cough, trying to get as much oxygen as possible. The Lord of Darkness looked sternly at Sherry and asked what she was hiding in her right hand. Sherry decided that if he found out that she wanted to inject him with tranquilizers, he would kill her on the spot, so she decided to hide the needle in the folds of her clothes. The girl decided that she would show him the mandrake flower, which was also in the cloak, to at least calm him down a little. The Lord of Darkness, folding his arms, examined the plant and said that he was not interested. Sherry calmed down and thanked fate that Castle didn't notice that she was going to give him a tranquilizer. And only then did the girl breathe a sigh of relief when the Lord of Darkness grabbed her by the hood and asked if she was alone here, and where was the other one. Sherry began to remember that Adam had also asked her this question, as if they had known in advance that she would not be alone. The girl asked what he was doing, since she was not to blame for anything. But Castle noticed that from the very beginning she seemed strange to him. Castle noticed that Sherry was behaving completely differently from the others. At the mere sight of him, everyone either laughed as if he was abnormal or trembled with fear. And only she managed to keep herself in check. The girl thought his words were complete nonsense, because she couldn't even imagine people who would dare to laugh at Cassel, because his terrible character and mountain of muscles only inspire fear in his opponent. Cassel leaned close to the girl and noticed that she acted as if she knew who he was. Then he suddenly asked if she was really the pharmacist who Adam Haley had summoned to the estate. Sherry tried to explain as calmly as possible that Adam simply told them that an important guest had come from the capital, which was why she was behaving this way with Cassel. The Lord of Darkness said he didn't like her and asked why she was hiding her face, since he couldn't see it. Sherry thought there was nothing strange about that, since she had cast a spell to hide her beauty. Castle pulled her by the hood and said he wouldn't let her go until she showed her face. The girl screamed that she had an injury in her childhood, which is why half of her face is paralyzed because she couldn't heal in time. There were scars on his face, and if anyone touched them, they would contract this disease. The girl said that if he didn't mind catching this disease, she could lift the spell and show him his face. Sherry noticed a window pop up saying the medication was due to expire in 5 minutes. She reminded Castle, as politely as possible, that it was time to take the medication that was causing insomnia. The Lord of Darkness let go of the girl and looked at her more closely. The man asked her what she felt when he pressed on her throat. A window appeared next to him, noting that the Dark Lord had stopped doubting Sherry. The girl barely contained her anger and said that she was in pain and could barely breathe. Now Sherry understood that the Lord of Darkness simply wanted to get revenge on her for giving him a drink from a syringe and covering her mouth with her hand. The girl was angry that this scumbag wanted to kill her just because she wanted to help him, and she even tried to touch him as little as possible. The patient Sherry burst in and shouted that, because of the potion, Castle definitely wouldn't have died, and she almost went to the other world. Although he only needed to be patient for a couple of seconds to swallow the medicine. Castle smiled and said that he also squeezed her throat for a couple of seconds. The girl screamed that he shouldn't lie because it was much longer. Then Castle suggested that she check if it lasted a couple of seconds or longer and repeat her actions. Sherry quickly replied that she must have been mistaken and mentally cursed herself for the fact that this scumbag was threatening her with force. The girl thought about the recent events and heard the Lord of Darkness tell her to quickly get what she had brought. Sherry asked in surprise what he meant, and the Lord told her in a stern voice to immediately get the insomnia potion and the health potion. The girl felt uneasy, and goosebumps ran down her skin from his look and tone of voice. She didn't dare say that maybe he was joking, but it was no joke. Sherry quickly bribed him with a potion and fled from the Lord of Darkness as quickly as she could. She remembered how Castle held several vials of potion and asked if that was all. Then Sherry explained that all the ingredients are given to her at Earl Haley's estate, and she prepares the appropriate potion from them, so there is nothing more. Leaving the room, she smiled contentedly and thought that of course she had managed to hide something from the Lord of Darkness. The hooded cloak, which only GMs could use, could hold around 1,000 items, and only the user could see them. Although the cape didn't look very presentable, it helped her escape Castle's hands, and he would now be able to take his own medicine. So Sherry decided to focus on completing additional quests. The chandelier in the living room of Haley's estate was haunting the girl, so she asked Ari when this item was used. The GM explained that it was needed during the hunt for the centipede leader. The girl wondered, because she had never met anyone who used it. But GM Jin explained that none of the gamers could find this chandelier, so they didn't use it. Suddenly, the butler approached the girl and asked what she was talking about alone. It was so unexpected that the girl was seriously scared. Sherry was already regretting her lack of self-control and thinking out loud, but she needed to explain this to the butler somehow. She explained that she was simply looking for a dining room for the servants. The butler was not going to help her with her search, but simply pointed to the exit, remarked that he wanted to show her something, and ordered her to follow him. Sherry said out loud that the butler was very kind, but mentally noted that with all the things she had to do, she didn't have time to wander around the estate looking for this strange butler. But still, curiosity got the better of her, and Sherry really wanted to know what the butler was up to, so she decided to follow him and see what would happen next. Then the butler returned and said that he had something to do with the girl. He suggested that Sherry take all her insomnia potions and come to the stairs at 12 o'clock tomorrow. If she left the potions and left, he would pay her 50,000 gold coins. The centipedes provoked a catastrophe to break the seal and free themselves. If the world were to end, the monsters that were freed would provide the centipedes with force. That's why the centipedes tried at all costs to drive all users and the apothecary out of Haley County. This usually happened right before the disaster began. The butler's suggestion made Sherry wonder if there was a centipede in it too. There were 3 whole days left before the disaster, and this proposal made the girl think that it was happening too soon. The butler asked if she was coping with the Count's task and how much potion she still had left. And although Sherry had no desire to chat with the butler, she still couldn't ignore his question either. Sherry replied that there was about enough potion left to prevent a catastrophe. Then she remembered his offer and felt uneasy. After all, he had ordered her to leave the estate at 12 o'clock tomorrow. Usually this happened right before the very beginning of trouble, and the girl had the impression that all events were happening much faster than necessary. Sherry thought it would be even better if it were over quickly, and said out loud that 50,000 gold was somehow not enough for her. But the butler suddenly became angry and shouted, asking how she was talking to him. The man shouted that she could trade all her life and never earn that much money. And if she ignored his words, he could easily call her a witch, and then no one would even bother. And they would immediately execute the girl in the central square. Sherry had no doubt that the butler had a centipede, and while the butler angrily shouted at her to think first and then open her mouth to speak, Sherry said that everything was completely wrong and thanked him for showing her the way. The butler strode into the room and said through gritted teeth that he wasn't going to kill her just yet. And then the man opened the door to a room where there were many servants who had centipedes and said that if the girl refused to follow his orders, he would show her what would happen to her. Sherry was surprised that so many centipedes could be gathered in one place. After all, only the main monster could do it, and the girl was convinced that it was the butler. The butler smiled contentedly and decided that Sherry had fallen into a trap from which it would be impossible to get out. Meanwhile, the girl took out a gun with a tranquilizer and a potion containing light, and thought that such a turn of events would even benefit her. Sherry immediately got down to business and began destroying the centipedes one by one, which also did not stand idly by and began attacking the poor girl from different directions. The girl understood that only with the help of light could this evil spirit be killed, so she skillfully aimed vials of potion at the centipedes. A few minutes later, all the monsters were lying on the floor, and Sherry said wearily that she hadn't sweated this much in a long time, looking around at the whole bunch of unconscious servants. Informational windows immediately began to appear, noting that she had received dark essence for each centipede she killed. Sherry noted that this was a pretty good catch for today. Then Sherry noticed that the butler was nowhere to be found on the floor and began to wonder where he had gone. Suddenly, she heard the voices of men ordering her not to move. One of the knights shouted that this intruder had attacked the servants of the Haley estate and ordered the other knights to seize Sherry. The Earl of Haley himself stood next to the knights. The Count, folding his arms, asked if she had really attacked his servants, and next to him was an informative window stating that he had great distrust of Sherry. The frightened girl thought that she should also pretend to be unconscious and lie on the floor, because now she risked being accused of being a witch. And while Sherry was trying to justify herself, she noticed another unknown man standing next to the butler. An information window said that this was the senior butler, Frank. Hamster. The butler asked Sherry what she was yelling about and explained to the Count that this girl was trying to harm their family, which is why she had started this fight. But Earl Haley ordered everyone to be quiet because he was going to listen to all sides first, and told Sherry to explain everything. The girl was confused because she did not know how to explain to him that she was just killing centipedes. While she was gathering her thoughts, one of the knights hit her with a stick, saying that she really wanted to harm their family. Then Sherry immediately started shouting that the senior maid had come to her room during dinner and bought a sleeping potion. The girl pointed to the maid, who was lying unconscious on the floor. The maid said that many of the servants began to worry about the intruder, so they could not sleep at night, and that is why she asked the apothecary to prepare a sleeping potion for her. Then Sherry added that the maid had incorrectly calculated the doses for adults, and when the girl came into this room, she saw the servants already lying on the floor. Sherry explained that the servants must have mixed the potion with the food, which was absolutely unacceptable, and that was why the effects were much stronger than planned. The girl mentally noted that she had never lied so phenomenally in her life. Haley was watching Sherry intently, listening to her story. One of the knights approached him and remarked that it all sounded like the truth. The knights who examined the servants, after a thorough inspection, concluded that they were all alive and simply in a state of deep sleep. Moreover, there were no visible wounds on the servants' bodies. Then the senior butler intervened in the conversation, asking why the girl didn't call the guards, but simply stood in the middle of the unconscious people and did nothing. Sherry was surprised that this man turned out to be quite intelligent, although she wouldn't have thought so from his appearance. The girl quickly began to explain that she had been trying to find a solution on her own, since this had happened because of her potion. Graphius Haley asked if there was any truth in her words. Sherry looked at the Count with a look of hope in her eyes and said that she was telling the whole truth. Then Adam ordered the knights to let the apothecary go. Sherry thanked the Count and decided that he was indeed a useless white sword. All his servants tried to accuse her, and she already said goodbye to life. But Adam was not affected by their plots. The girl decided not to test her fate and to get out of here as quickly as possible, so she bowed and said that it was time for her to go to the criminal in the tower. But Count Adam told her to wait and suddenly asked if she was not satisfied with the reward. Sherry looked him in the eye and asked what he meant. Adam repeated his question. Then it dawned on the girl that most likely this was not a proposal from the centipede, but simply the butler carrying out Count Adam's orders. His Highness asked if the offered sum was not enough for the apothecary to leave all the potions and leave the estate. But this alarmed the girl even more, because she did not understand why Adam would make such an offer to her. Sherry suspected that there was also a centipede monster inside Earl Haley. Although unlike other centipedes, Earl Haley's vision was not blurred and his pupils were not dilated, which were characteristic features of all people infected with the monster. It was difficult for Sherry to understand, because Earl Haley was too calm, and while she was thinking, an information window appeared, stating that Adam was unhappy with her silence. The girl decided that she needed to answer first, because she wouldn't mind being careful, and she said that that amount really wasn't enough. The butler interrupted the conversation again, shouting that this impudent woman had no right to say anything about the amount of the fee, because she would never earn that much money. But Earl Haley immediately calmed the servant down. Adam said they would continue this conversation tomorrow. Sherry immediately took the opportunity to leave, explaining that she had to go to prison urgently. Within a couple of seconds, there was no trace of Sherry, because she understood that she urgently needed to get out of here before they started asking her more stupid questions. Count Haley stared at the strange pharmacist for a long time, and an information box appeared next to him, indicating that he was interested in her. As soon as Sherry was alone, she immediately called for help from gamers and asked if the main character could become a centipede. Ari said that the game's script had no settings that would allow centipedes to inhabit the main character. Then Sherry asked why Adam had ordered the butler to kick her out of the estate. After a long message, a notification finally appeared that gamers could only observe the situation via chat, but could not know all the changes in the game. Sherry found that these GMs was of little use and decided to go about her own business. Sherry had an unpleasant premonition about Adam, but first she had to visit Castle. Opening the door, she saw a man full of energy who smiled and noted that she was late today. The girl did not expect such a greeting and thought that he was a real brat. After carefully examining the chamber, Sherry noticed empty bottles of potion on the floor and was simply shocked that in the half day she was away, he had drunk all the medicine. Sherry shouted that she had warned Cassell to drink 1 bottle an hour. The girl thought that with such antics he would drive her crazy. The Lord of Darkness looked at the apothecary and said that there was no problem with that, because he just wanted to sleep, which is why he drank the potion more often. Sherry cursed herself for being such a fool and giving Cassell all the potions. She understood that after drinking so much medicine, he could develop an addiction, which could easily lead to the owner falling asleep and thus causing a catastrophe before its time. Meanwhile, Cassell explained that 1 bottle per hour was far from enough for him. He assumed that the apothecary's potion was of poor quality, since its effect was almost nil. Angrily, Sherry shouted that there was no problem with her potion. She thought to herself that this brat could easily piss her off. Looking at the girl's reaction, Cassell calmly remarked that he should pull a line about the pharmacist he hired wanting to harm the Haley family. The girl shouted that this was a baseless accusation and that she had already obtained the Count's confession. Then Cassell asked her directly if she wanted to say that the problem was with him. The Nightmare Lord's mood had deteriorated, and he advised her to talk less, and it was better to give up the rest of the potion and get out of here if she didn't want to die. Sherry couldn't get used to his unbearable character, and said in a softer tone that she didn't want to find out who was to blame, but wanted to warn that exceeding the dose could lead to immunity to the potion. Looking at Cassell, Sherry thought that maybe he had already developed immunity and was trying to hide it, because he himself was uncomfortable with such a quick effect. The main character of the game, Castle Ludwig, was known for his tough character, but despite his terrible character, Castle's fans insisted that he actually had a good heart and was sincerely loved. Throughout the game's story, Castle has been desperately trying to prevent the end of the world, as evidenced by the endless scars on his body from the wounds he inflicted on himself to keep from falling asleep. Moreover, fans were amazed by how Castle, risking his own life, fought the monster alone. The fate of all humanity worried the Lord of Darkness more than his own life. Therefore, the fact that his body had developed immunity to the potion must have really upset him, and he probably blamed himself for bringing the disaster closer because of his fault. Sherry cautiously asked if he had developed an immunity to the potion, and Cassell replied displeasedly that he didn't know anything about it, and that the apothecary should know better because she was the one who prepared the medicine. The girl doubted her conclusions. But whatever the reason, she still couldn't abuse the potion. Still, there was no one to check it except Sherry, and after weighing all the pros and cons, she said that tonight she would personally check whether Cassell had developed immunity and how effective the medicine was. But for this, the girl needed to know how often the Lord of Darkness used the potion, so they agreed that she would monitor the medication personally, and he would inform her in advance as soon as he wanted to sleep. After taking out the bottle, Sherry was about to approach Cassell, but then she remembered how he had almost strangled her the last time they met, and suddenly stopped. Sherry quickly took a couple of steps back, and the Lord of Darkness, looking at her in surprise, asked what was the matter. The girl wasn't going to explain anything to Cassell, but simply swung the bottle of potion and threw the medicine straight into the owner's hands. The man's reaction was fine, and he deftly caught the bottle. Then he looked at her with a look that made him want to kill her. An informational window appeared next to him, stating that he disliked her. Upon seeing the message, Sherry already regretted her actions and didn't understand why he was so angry, because the medicine had gotten to him anyway. The Lord of Darkness angrily rose quickly from the floor and, looking her in the eyes, began to approach her. He angrily asked what she was doing. Sherry tried to explain as calmly as possible that she had given the potion in such a way as to protect herself and would continue to do so in the future. But Cassell angrily said that she had better fire her damn gun already. His eyes were bloodshot, and the informational field indicated that he felt a strong desire to kill her. After reading the message, Sherry was seriously scared. She froze with fear and had no desire to test what he was capable of. The girl could not understand why the Lord of Nightmares immediately became furious with every wrong action. In any case, Cassell will act according to his own plan until the very end of the game. He will be one of those who, for the sake of a quick and effective way to prevent disaster, will make peace even with his bitter enemy. Sherry understood that Cassell needed her for this potion, and that he would try to make a deal with her to get the necessary medicine. Cassell approached the girl and said in a threatening tone that he was warning her for the last time, that she had better give him all the potions she had and get out of here while she was alive. But Sherry wasn't going to play by his rules, so she said that this couldn't be done under any circumstances. Cassell asked in surprise why. The girl explained in a calm tone that she needed to find out if he had developed immunity to the potion. Sherry tried to speak clearly and to the point. But Cassell, smiling, stated that some talentless, ragged woman was simply trying to snatch her pitiful money. This was the last straw, and the girl shouted angrily that he hadn't even seen her face, and already his tongue was turning to grind such nonsense. Clenching her fists, the girl was ready to pounce on the Lord of Darkness, and he, smiling, noticed that only recently she had been ready to crawl in front of him, and now she almost scratched out his eyes. Folding his arms across his chest, Cassell asked if Adam knew who Haley was. A message appeared in the information box that the Lord of Nightmares was curious about her change in personality. Sherry thought that this impudent man still had the audacity to mock her. Out loud, she only replied that she was polite to those who did not overstep the bounds of decency. The girl wanted to add something more, but a message appeared in front of her, mentioning the Zenith Empire, the date, the month, and a countdown with 1 minute remaining. Sherry realized that she desperately needed to infuse the dark essence into the Sword of Light, and she had almost no time left for it. The girl immediately ran to the sword and began to fill it with dark energy. She understood that she would not be able to replenish her supplies tonight, and was glad that she had managed to gather enough yesterday. She knew that there were only 2 days left before the disaster began, and she needed to make every effort to fill this sword with life-giving power. While Sherry was wondering where to get her dark essence, Cassell suddenly asked if she really wanted to revive this sword. The information window next to Cassell indicated that he doubted her actions. The hairy Lord of Nightmares asked how some apothecary knew about this ancient sword. Sherry understood that of course the Nightmare Lord had reason to doubt her, although in the game he had never been interested in this relic. The girl could find nothing else to say than that she was doing everything on the orders of the Earl of Haley. Castle asked in surprise what she meant. Castle and Adam wouldn't see each other until the end of the world, and it was very convenient to hide behind the Count when it was convenient for her. Therefore, she confidently said that the Count himself was giving her the dark essence so that she could revive the sword. Castle thought for a moment and asked aloud how Count Haley had managed to catch the centipede that devoured the darkness. Sherry saw that Castle was musing about the dark energy of the essence and wondered what was troubling the Lord of Darkness. The girl also wondered how Castle knew about the centipede, since he was sitting in isolation and couldn't know what was happening in the county. Then Sherry thought that maybe Castle had heard the legend about Haley County. Distracted from his thoughts, Castle turned to the Sherry, and she immediately handed him the potion. The Lord smiled and noted that she was not as stupid as he had previously thought. Sherry decided not to argue with the Lord of Nightmares because she had an extremely important task ahead of her, to find out if he had immunity and how effective the potion was now. Taking out the watch, the girl looked carefully at the dial and remembered the time when the owner took the medicine. But less than 25 minutes later, Cassell asked for more. Sherry realized that he would need 2 bottles per hour, even though she had previously expected one. The girl mentally calculated all her supplies and decided that with such success, she should have enough potions. The main thing is that the time of administration should not be reduced even less. She explained in detail that he should take each bottle after 25 minutes and no sooner. Castle, smiling, told her to give up all her supplies and get out of here. Cass-El said that she also needed to rest to gain strength to prepare the potion. Standing up, Sherry replied that she was not resting. The owner asked how she managed it. The girl said that this was the true calling of a pharmacist and that she was very responsible. Sherry mentally noted that this was her fake body, and that was why she did not feel tired, even when she was completely awake. Sherry gave the right amount of potion to Castle and also placed a watch in front of him and asked him to keep a close eye on the time. Now she had the opportunity to go to Earl Haley. Castle didn't take his eyes off the girl, and a message appeared in the information field that he was worried about her health and even sympathized when he looked at Sherry. Sherry noticed that the Lord of Nightmares was running out of strength. She thought that his condition was related to the magical shackles that had been placed on him before being thrown into prison. The shackles took away the Nightmare Lord's physical and magical power, although Sherry had already managed to awaken his consciousness. The girl felt sorry for the main character and decided that she would only be able to complete the game if Castle took an active role. So she decided that she needed to help him a little with this. Sherry took the higher-level potion and placed it before the Lord. She explained what it was and advised him to take the medicine when she left the room. She immediately reassured herself that she wasn't worried about him at all, but was doing everything she could to get through the game as quickly as possible. But before she could reach the door, Castle had finished all the medicine. Seeing this, Sherry shouted, asking what he was doing, because she had asked him to do this when she was not around. She saw the expression on the Nightmare Lord's face change and was very scared for her safety, so she quickly ran towards the exit. Out of the corner of her eye, Sherry saw that the Nightmare Lord had also sped up and was trying to catch up with her. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it would jump out, and she started to run as fast as she could. Sherry barely managed to jump out before her master caught her. As soon as the door closed, Castle shouted that she had run away like a rat. As she was walking out the door, Sherry saw an information box that said Castle was interested in her and thought it was some kind of mistake, because the Lord of Nightmares was simply mocking her for running away out of fear. The girl didn't even have the strength left to get to her room, and she cursed that because of this damned game she had to constantly risk her own life. Finally reaching the room, Sherry reassured herself that she had finally managed to decide on the dosage of the potion and decided to take a bath to at least somehow distract herself from her heavy thoughts. But when she opened the door to the room, she saw 2 servants rummaging through her things. The men were talking to each other, saying that the potion must be here somewhere. Sherry asked irritably what they were doing here and mentally said goodbye to the idea of taking a bath and resting. The enraged girl took out a potion with light and shouted that she wasn't even going to figure out what they were looking for here, because her mood had already completely spoiled. Taking out her gun, Sherry prepared to attack and said that they would not be able to leave her room alive. With skillful movements, the girl managed to deal with 2 centipedes at once. Now Sherry considered herself a real pro at hunting these monsters. Having dealt with the centipedes, Sherry picked up the dark essence and noted that although she had failed to implement her plan for the bath, she had at least managed to replenish her supplies. Just as Sherry was about to leave the room, the door opened and the maids rushed in, furiously asking what the pharmacist was doing here. A senior maid named Elena looked at the servants lying on the floor and asked if the girl had really killed them. Sherry caught herself thinking that she was having déjà vu, and that this was not the first time she had to explain why the servants were lying unconscious. The girl pointed to the mess in her room and explained it that she had simply stunned the thieves who were trying to ransack her room for a while. And even before that, the men had lied that it was the Count's order. The head maid ordered Olivia to report what had happened to the butler and to summon the knights. Sherry assured her that she had not killed the men. Then the maid said that the knights would deal with what had happened and ordered the apothecary to go to the Count because he was looking for her. On the way, the senior maid noticed that Earl Haley had been calling the apothecary to his room a lot lately. Sherry agreed that he could do without her. The girl didn't really want to see His Highness again, so she asked the maid why she had been summoned. Elena explained that she knew nothing and was only carrying out His Highness's orders. Then Sherry imagined that she might be accused of another crime again and was already preparing to listen to Adam's claims. Suddenly, the senior maid said that she wanted to ask Sherry something. Olenina explained that she did not remember at all how she bought sleeping pills from Sherry and wanted to clarify whether she really did it, because the Count told her about the last incident that had happened recently. The girl was ashamed that her lie had caused such a story, but there was no turning back for her. So she cautiously asked if Count Haley knew that Elena did not remember anything about buying the sleeping potion. The senior maid, smiling, replied that of course the Count knew everything. Now Sherry understood the reason for such an urgent call. The maid announced that the apothecary, Sherry Azrael, had come to see His Highness, and the girl, looking at the expression on Adam's face, immediately understood that she was not very happy to see her here. The Count sternly asked where she had been all night. Sherry saw an information window that said the Count was hostile towards her. She bowed and quickly explained that she had been with the prisoner during the night. Then Adam asked if this was somehow connected to the fact that Cassell managed to break the magical shackles. The surprised girl decided to answer that this was precisely the reason she was with Castle, and mentally noted that, of course, Count Haley had already been told about everything. Sherry explained that she had tried to give the Nightmare Lord a potion, but he resisted, so she had to make sure that Castle could take the potion on his own, and apologized for not telling Haley about it sooner. Then Count Adam sternly asked how she would explain her lie that she had sold sleeping pills to the senior maid. Sherry had already figured out on the way how she would explain this to Adam, and said that it was not a lie and that the sleeping potion had a side effect, namely memory loss. Adam shouted that the sleeping potion might make you nauseous, but memory loss was not among the side effects because he had personally taken such a potion and, moreover, the pharmacist's lies did not affect him. Then the girl thought that perhaps Count Haley's announcement that he was looking for an apothecary to prepare a sleeping potion was not created for Castle, but for him personally. Sherry decided that it would be dangerous for her to continue hiding the truth, so she explained that she had been hunting monsters that were parasitizing the servants and collecting the dark essence with which to revive the Sword of Light. The girl took out a gun and demonstrated exactly how to kill a centipede. Adam kept his eyes on Sherry and listened attentively to everything she told him. Now Sherry was convinced that Adam knew about the monsters, and this further complicated the situation, because the game scenario was developing much faster than necessary. The user should have intervened first, after which Adam should have learned about the centipedes, but now he already knew about the existence of monsters in his territory. Sherry had only one question left: why he didn't take any action in this regard. The girl also added that she acted on Castle's orders. Earl Haley asked in surprise why the Lord of Nightmares needed this, and the girl, spreading her hands, explained that she herself did not know why. Adam emphasized that he warned that Castle was a dangerous criminal, and he did not understand why she was helping him. Sherry said that she was simply doing the job she was paid for, and that destroying low-level monsters would have no effect on Earl Haley's estate. The girl was counting on the fact that the player would definitely believe such an explanation. Her goal was to force all the main characters to destroy the centipede boss, prevent changes in Castle, and save this world. Sherry had no need to get close to the characters, and if she could make Castle and Adam friends, they would do everything to make this game end as soon as possible. The girl expected that their conversation had come to an end, so, bowing, she said goodbye to Earl Haley and asked permission to leave the room. But the Count said he had one more question for the Sherry. And when the girl looked up at Adam, he asked who she was, a brave warrior or a witch who wanted to harm him. Sherry replied that she was an ordinary pharmacist who worked for a decent salary. And the girl thought to herself that she was just a person who wanted to finish the game and survive in the real world. Earl Haley admitted that he liked Sherry's frankness and honesty, so he ordered the girl to follow him.